Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
Steve!
So Steve messaged me with a little sneaky picture. He was like, hey Ian, I'm going to start reading Red Dragon. Do you want to talk about Red Dragon on the podcast? And I was like, fuck yeah, I do. Which is interesting because it's been a while ago, probably less than a year, I think, when we did the compare and contrast review between Manhunter and the film adaptation of Red Dragon, or the direct, what do I call it? The film that is also titled Red Dragon. Because Manhunter is an adaptation too. And like, you know, Steve and I are very different places on that. I think I still have like residual adolescent energy against Manhunter to this day. And also Ed Norton fucking rocks my socks, so but we did that a while ago, and then since then leading up to that, I was reading through the Hannibal books, and I was like, well, let's talk about these. And so I was really impressed by the like differences in adaptation in that regard. And then after that, I started watching the Hannibal show. And so it's funny to come back to Red Dragon again, because I was sitting here all week really trying to like think on this. And I don't think there's any other work besides maybe Stephen King that has been adapted this many times. So like, by my count, there are 3 adaptations to varying degrees of faithfulness of this book by Thomas Harris titled Red Dragon. And like, I know King did his own version of The Shining because he didn't like the Kubrick film. I know we got another King centric remake around Running Man recently. So there's 2 times, but not the third. Like I it's just a weird thing for like a modern-ish book. I mean, you know, came out in the early 80s to get adapted so many times and you know, about 20 years apart. Well, this Hannibal's coming out in 2010, so you know, 20 years between the first 2 and then like another 10 years until the third one. And you know, I guess we're due for another adaptation of Red Dragon at this point.
I'm kind of surprised that we haven't gotten an announcement of more Hannibal stuff at this point, because you're right, it kind of feels like it comes in on cycles where like it's been enough time, people liked Hannibal, a lot of people watched it during the pandemic and got into the bandwagon of it, but we don't have another Hannibal Lecter project lined up. You'd think at the very least you try and get it on the nostalgia bait and be like, hey, Anthony Hopkins, you want to do Red Dragon 2, Electric Boogaloo, something like that, and see where it goes.
I think the thing that's missing, if we're ever going to get another Hannibal thing, because the show kind of does it, but also kind of not, because it's like adapting its own thing and playing with its own ideas, is I would like, you know, in the tradition of the movies, I would like a Hannibal film that is just about his time as like a prolific serial killer and like working with Will Graham. I think that's the adaptation that's missing, or the story that's missing from the Hannibal canon that I would be the most interested in seeing. Again, the Hannibal
show is the close,
Hannibal. it's the closest to it, but again, it's kind of doing its own things, and it's in the journey of doing that. It's also adapting everything except Silence of the Lambs and like reworking the timelines on it. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of messy. As far as like what I would want as for like a direct chapter of the story kind of thing. That doesn't feel like it's aping on the other films. So, but yeah, I don't know. Red Dragon's really, really good. It's also just really notable to me because it's a very successful book. Obviously, it kind of gets top of the New York Times bestseller. It gets a really quick out the door film adaptation because Manhunter's 88 and this came out in 80, I want to say.
This came out the book came out in 81, and then Manhunter comes out in 86, something like that.
Yeah, so that's pretty quick turnaround for film adaptation. Yeah, 86 for Manhunter. So that's pretty crazy. So you get the immediate turnaround. This gets adapted, and that pushes Thomas Harris to write Silence of the Lambs, and I know the film adaptation is
91.
So Silence of the Lambs, the book, is 88. So
that's even quicker.
Yeah, so he turned out Silence of the Lambs pretty quick after Manhunter was so successful. But I think the thing that I just find really fascinating about that is the choice to abandon the protagonist of Manhunter and shift gears. Because Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal both follow Clarice Starling and her dynamic with Hannibal, and Hannibal becomes the main character kind of the books, or like the dual protagonist, I suppose. Anti-hero, maybe, I don't know, however you'd want to phrase it. So it's kind of weird that like Will Graham, who is like indisputably the main character, and Hannibal's just kind of in the first book.
He's like 3 scenes.
Yeah, gets like abandoned by the franchise. I find that like so fascinating. Not that I necessarily think that his journey needed to continue, so to speak, but it's just it's just such a weird thing to see. Like, successful novel gets adapted into film, immediately the author cranks out another novel and abandons the main character and just starts following Hannibal Lecter. I don't know like what the popular response to Hannibal was, because like he's a big character in the book and like he matters, but he matters within the context of Will Graham. Like the Tooth Fairy has like a subtle connection to Hannibal in Red Dragon, but it's not like substantial enough that you feel like Hannibal's this like puppet master force or anything. It's such an interesting choice to like think about as from a writing perspective to go and abandon your protagonist and create a new one from scratch.
Well, and it almost feels like there is an impetus to turn it into a bit of an anthology, where the first book is Will Graham trying to find a serial killer, and he gets help in a couple of scenes from his pal Hannibal the Cannibal. And then the second book is Clarice Starling needs to track a serial killer, and she also gets help from her buddy Hannibal the Cannibal. And then, because he's a slightly bigger factor in Silence of the Lambs, I haven't read the book, but the movie, he's in the movie, but again, he's also not in the movie very much. The thing about Silence of the Lambs is he's directed so well and he's played so well that he feels like he has a much bigger force in that movie than he ultimately does, because he's also only in it for like 15 minutes or less. But he's enough of like a draw to the audience that then after that, you kind of just can't do anything but Hannibal, and he takes over a little bit. I wonder if some of that plays into the book, because the third book doesn't come out until after Silence of the Lambs is a movie. And so you have the reception of that movie, you have the reception of Jodie Foster in that role, and you abandon this format of FBI agent talks to a serial killer to catch a serial killer and decide to just continue the story of whatever your biggest success was, which ended up being Silence of the Lambs. Because with Manhunter, like it's a good movie. I love it. It's one of my favorite movies. But when it came out, it was a box office bomb. And even though the book was well received, the movie wasn't doing much to like enhance the reputation of the book per se. So you could be forgiven for forgetting the fact that Manhunter even exists. But then Silence of the Lambs comes out, and it's widely regarded as one of the greatest movies of all time. It's one of the first horror movies to get serious awards recognition. It becomes this big cultural touchstone with Buffalo Bill. And from there, it sort of feels like you'd be making a mistake if you didn't keep those characters compared to Red Dragon / Manhunter.
Yeah, possibly. It's interesting. I just looked up the years again. So Hannibal, the film adaptation, is 2001, and Hannibal, the novel, is 99. So he really, like, he was
cranking them out. Oh, that's really funny. That makes me even sadder for Hannibal Rising, because that movie, that's a rough experience.
Well, again, that's the one that's like back-assward, because that's the one where they have him write the novel based on the screenplay. It's a mess. Yeah, I don't know. Like, you're probably right that the success of the film is what drives the production of Hannibal. But I don't know. Again, it's so interesting to me to decide to flip the focus away from this character who is insanely well developed in Will Graham, and to get an adaptation that quickly, even if it's not a financial success, as you claim, it's a really, really good movie.
Because it is.
I mean, I like it more than I used to, but I still think I like. Again, we talked about this in the episode, so you can go watch that. But just for me, the Ed Norton scene of "I'm gonna cut it off" is just the fucking tits. Just how like absolutely fucked up that is just perfect for me. But I don't know, the Red Dragon novel in and of itself is insanely good, and Will Graham's an insanely well-developed character in it, so much so that you get the television series deciding to focus on Will and kind of take bits and bobs from the Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal books and rework those within the context of the show. And Will Graham gets just that like fucking awesome concept of "this is my design." Like, that's his fucking catchphrase. It's just so good within the context of the Hannibal series. So I don't know, it's interesting to just like dwell on that of here's this book that got such acclaim and has been like reimagined for film multiple times now, in a way that, again, I don't think many other things have really checked that box. And yet the protagonist is kind of like left in the wind of the rest of the series of the books, and I don't know, I just find that really, really interesting. What was your what was the biggest thing you walked away from after having read the novel? What was the thing that stuck with you the most?
So it's gonna sound like a backhanded compliment, but I don't mean it to, because it's just a sincere compliment. I really liked this book. I thought it was very good. But the thing that surprised me most was I think Thomas Harris has a real clear weakness for dialogue. I think it's the kind of dialogue where if you say it out loud, you could probably give it a little bit of rhythm, but in the context of the page, it feels really stilted to me and very unnatural, and like it lacks that sort of rhythm. But I think that there is a degree of that where it's on purpose. And I think, like you said, Will is such a well-developed character. He's so good in this. And I think Will is the perfect protagonist for Thomas Harris's writing style, because he is a character whose whole shtick is his ability to empathize with other people, his ability to recreate the feelings of someone else when he's in a scene, and that's what makes his life so chaotic, is that he's living out these moments of empathy for others that causes a disconnect from reality. And I think what surprised me the most about the book is Harris does such a good job of making the reader, through his prose, experience the same process that Will is in. That by reading Will's thoughts, and just by naturally reading a book and learning to empathize with its character, we're getting sucked into the same trap Will is, of learning how to empathize with a serial killer. And so when Will goes to the lead's house for the first time and he's walking through it, or then later when he's watching their home movies, and his perspective is basically shifting back and forth between who he is and what he assumes the Tooth Fairy to be thinking, and you as the reader having this weird sort of dissonance going on of, I really like Will, I am trying to empathize with Will, but he keeps saying these things that are kind of disturbing and putting these thoughts in my head like a book is supposed to. And I thought that that level of discomfort and that examination of empathy was really good.
Yeah, because I saw you sent me those screen caps of like the idea that he's doing the same things as the Tooth Fairy at the same time, like they're brushing their teeth at the same time or waking up at the same time. That was one of the big things that stuck with you. The scene that jumped out to me in regards to like Will and specifically on the dialogue is the idea that Will begins to talk like the people that he's talking to.
Yeah.
That is just such a fascinating idea, because like I kind of wish that Harris hadn't pointed it out, and he points it out really early to kind of like clue you in on the kind of person that Will Graham is. I kind of wish that'd been like more of a show don't tell, and it makes me, knowing that now, it makes me kind of want to go back and watch all 3 adaptations again to see if anybody like really does a good job of demonstrating that without drawing attention to it. Because like, you know, I feel like everyone has this. Like, if you go to a doctor's office, you ever like do the thing of like, oh well, I urinated or whatever. I've got like some pain in my like stomach region. Whereas in real life, you're like, I just took a piss. My stomach, my tummy hurts. Like, you know, like that code switching kind of dynamic. Being like in a more subtle way, where just, you know, talking to Will Graham is like talking to a mirror, is just such a fascinating idea.
And Harris is not a subtle writer, like by any stretch, and he's got multiple points in the book where I think he just says that flat out, because there is the bit early on about like Will adopting the speech of other people, but like about halfway through the novel, Crawford's talking to Dr. Bloom, and Bloom's got this line where he says, he can assume your point of view or mine, and maybe some other points of view that scare and sicken him. It's an uncomfortable gift, Jack. Perception's a tool that's pointed on both ends. And I mean, if that's not Will Graham, then nothing is. Its perception is pointed at 2 ends, and that's exactly what he experiences, and that's exactly how reading the book makes you feel. Is that by adopting the perception of another character, you are inadvertently surrendering a part of your perspective too, and Will losing that in real time is also you, the reader, losing it in real time and getting that sort of quiet discomfort from it.
Mm-hmm. I love how like absolutely fucked up Will's life becomes throughout the course of this. Again, they do it in all the movies and adaptations. If anything, his life gets more fucked up in the show than anything else.
Oh yeah, by a mile.
But I like how fucked up his life gets, and I love going back to the beginning of the book and just seeing that I'll be miles away. I'll just be helping on the case. I won't even be involved. It's, you know, just like halfway through the book. Okay, so I'm going to do this interview with Freddie Lowndes so that I become the Tooth Fairy's main target, and we're going to use me as a piece of bait to draw the Tooth Fairy out. It just spirals out of control so quickly until you get to the ultimate finale of the Tooth Fairy coming to his house to try to kill him, and it ends up being Molly that has to deal with it and shit. And just, I love how like horribly his life ends in the book, because the last scene with Molly is him looking at her and saying, "I love you," and she just like looks back at him and cries, and then you don't see her again the rest of the, like, it's very short. You're in the epilogue chapter at that point, but you don't see her again the rest of the book. That's where their relationship ends, and it's
One
so
of the
fucking sad.
One of the things that none of the adaptations do, to the best of my knowledge, it's been a minute since I've watched the Hannibal TV show, but none of the movies, at least Red Dragon or Manhunter, have his son be adopted, or him be a stepdad. Because in this, Willie is not his son. He's got this weird sort of this inferiority complex because it's Molly's kid and Will just walked into their life. And towards the end of the book, when she's staying with her former in-laws and he's trying to push her to come back and she doesn't immediately want to, and it really rubs him the wrong way, that's not a thing that happens in any of the movies. And I really like that dimension, because you see how precarious his home life is immediately from that dynamic. That, like, when Manhunter opens, the idea is Will has entered heaven. He's entered paradise. He is in the promised land with the perfect life, and he's being forced away. That's why that opening shot is so interesting, because Crawford's looking at the sunset that Will gets to have, and Will's looking back because he realizes he has to leave it. And in this, the life he has is not perfect. It's he works for a living, he's not retired. His wife works, he's not retired. There's a kid involved that he has to constantly convince that he is a good father to, and it doesn't always work. And that is like another dimension of that empathy metaphor of like, what is building a relationship as a parent and kid, if not trying to find that double-sided perception and realizing how the kid feels, talking to the kids like kids, making the kids mirroring you, that sort of whole empathy machine that parents and children have with each other. And Will already kind of starting on the back foot because the kid shares his name, but he's not his actual kid. And that by the end, when Molly leaves and presumably he doesn't get to go back and see his kid again, it's really heartbreaking, because it feels like he was trying very hard to do the thing he does so well with serial killers that he just couldn't do with his own family.
That is fascinating. The level that of dimension it gives to make Will a stepfather, and to try to empathize with and not, you know, dismiss the problems of his family is just so fascinating. I like the way that Willie is written in here, because again, just even the name makes it like really uncomfortable when you think about it. And it's one of those things like you could imagine that like a couple that's really into each other or something could get over that, but at the same time it would just be so awkward all the time to be with someone. Like I never understand families that choose to go with like the junior naming convention or the third or whatever. That's always been weird to me, and just seems like confusing, because you know you're calling for someone in the house and then two people are responding. You're like, no, the other one. But like to enter into that intentionally, I don't know. That's just, it's just uncomfortable, and it's a subtle detail, but it's just uncomfortable enough that it really works. And the idea that Will just like has this life that's not perfect, but it seems perfect from the outside. It seems like everything he should want, and he should be happy with it. And then the detail, again, it's only in the book because you can get inside the character's head in a way that you can't in an adaptation without, you know, relying on narration. That Will says the happiest moment of his life is when they confirm that he's right about the film companies.
Yeah.
Where the like clue that leads them to the Tooth Fairy is yep, it is the film companies are the connection between these two families. Which also is like really funny because like Will's sitting there arguing with Jack that he's not doing anything special. He's just looking at the evidence, and Jack's like, "Well, you're looking at the evidence in a way no one else wants to," and it like really does vindicate both of their points simultaneously. Of Will is the only one that notices that there's like a discrepancy between the inventory of the Leeds house or the Jacoby house. To notice that like the film projector is missing and get the missing evidence of the videotapes, and no one else, like especially Crawford, even cares that there are videotapes to watch, and he's like sitting there bored through Will trying to watch these films, and then he's like, why are we doing this? This is stupid. I want to talk about the important thing related to how how the Tooth Fairy grabbed Freddie Lowndes. And he's like, well, no, I want to work on that too, Jack, but this is the important thing that we need to focus on right now. And it's, or no, it isn't the Freddie Lowndes thing at that point, is it? It's the, is it the Lowndes, or is it the eating the painting at that point? I forget.
Eating the painting happens at almost the very end, so it's probably the Freddie Lowndes thing.
I mean, but it's almost the very end that they... Yeah, eating the painting happens when they're on the plane, if I'm remembering it correctly. But I don't know. It's not that important. Like, you know, the point is Crawford's sitting there trying to look at the most immediate evidence, and Will's sitting here sifting through the older stuff, trying to, like, understand the family because the Tooth Fairy thought he understood the family or whatever. I just really like how vindicated both of them are in that scene of, yes, Will is right. He is just looking at the evidence to get his answer, but also Jack is right. He's looking at the evidence in a way that no one else is.
Well, and that's another one of those dimensions where him and the Tooth Fairy have that sort of connection, and why Will is able to read into him, because when you first meet Dollarhide, he's doing the same thing. He's looking at the home movies. He's watching his performance on screen. He refers to it as a performance, and he thinks about himself as a filmmaker. And he has these delusions. I mean, delusions might be too strong, but he's got these ideas in his head that he's capturing something in the same sort of primal way that Will is. And the chapter that ends with that quote I sent you about him and Dollarhide doing the same thing ends with Will recognizing that in order to understand Dollarhide, he has to lean into those similarities and allow them to move him to the past. And that's when the flashback chapters start. And you learn about Dollarhide's childhood and all that. And it's interesting, like, how on the nose Harris is about this stuff, where, like, your understanding of Will and his mindset is also sort of this fourth wall breaking metatextual layer to motivate how you learn about events in the story, whether or not Will is privy to them. And so Will's desire to learn about Dollarhide's past is the thing that prompts the book to enter you into a flashback without some sort of unnecessary lead-in. And I found that really interesting because as a reader, it like really confuses you. It confuses your sympathies in this way of like you resonate with Will in his lowest point when he recognizes that he is so mirrored in Dollarhide, and then instead of leaning into that sympathy for him, you are then jerked into Dollarhide's perspective and are forced to start creating empathy for him, just like Will has to. And it's a really cool device. It's one of those things where I feel like it doesn't quite work anywhere else because the act of reading the text is the thing that's kind of prompting these conversations. I will say I think Manhunter handles this as well as you possibly could outside of a book because it uses that first-person camera perspective, that the opening segment of the movie is you are in Dollarhide's eyes walking into the house, and then when Will enters the house, the camera mirrors the exact same position so that Dollarhide's vision and Will's vision are identical. And I think if you were going to do anything outside of a book, that's probably the best way you could have done it.
I would agree. It's interesting because I guess my opinion on voiceover in film was like fundamentally shaped when I got really into American Psycho, and both the director and the screenwriter did separate commentaries of the film, and I watched both of them. And I just remember, I think it was the screenwriter talking about how she and the director agreed that they didn't want to lean too heavily on voiceover, which is really funny because so much of American Psycho is voiceover. But they didn't want to lean too heavily on voiceover because they thought it was just too much of a crutch for like bad filmmaking. Of it just tells the audience what to think and what to feel. So they were very selective of what parts of the voiceover they would let into the movie, because they did feel like so much of it was necessary to get into like Patrick Bateman's head. There we go. God, I don't know if I have the balls to go back through the American Psycho novel. We'll think about it. That was a traumatic experience, man.
That's not an easy read.
It's not. So yeah, like I've always thought about that, of like the second I heard someone in industry talk about that, like it just, fundamentally changed the way that I viewed voiceover in films, of like, okay, is it necessary or is it just a crutch to get to like spoon feed the audience what they need to know? And so I've always kind of like not looked down on voiceover, but like it's made me hyper aware of it in a way I know I wasn't before that point. And so it's like, it's not that you can't do voiceover and narration in a film and have it work, but it does become like, is it just, are you like abandoning something about like the visual language of storytelling to do it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's again why Manhunter and Red Dragon the novel are both so interesting, is that it's not using that crutch of everything being spelled out to you in exposition in that way. Because Manhunter is able to do so much of that storytelling about Will's psyche without voiceover and with those POV shots. And Red Dragon, the novel, is counting on you to read people's thoughts, to kind of create those same emotional connections of being in another person's head. And with the novel, with the way Dollarhide and Will's relationships are kind of bounced back and forth, where your sympathies for Will are then used against you to help you resonate more with Dollarhide, and then bouncing back and forth, and Will sort of recreating things in his life that make it worse for him and Molly, or him and Willie, all in an attempt to catch Dollarhide. The book starts to take on this other life where it's like just the continued act of reading Will investigate this serial killer is going to ruin his life. It's like what Grant Morrison was doing with Multiversity, where he's like, if you want to save the universe, stop reading this book, because if you just stop reading, then nothing bad will happen. But you keep reading, and bad things happen.
Yep. No, it's fantastic. And so like the idea that like as he continues to do the investigation, because he has to, because of the lives he's gonna save. And I love that like Jack tries to lean into that and guilt trip him into stuff. And ultimately it's not about the lives, right? Because at the end of the book he gets the picture in the mail from Jack of the family that Dollarhide was going to go after next, and Will shows it to Molly and says, see, it was all worth it. And she's like, I know it was. And it's like, you wouldn't feel the need to do that if it was actually all worth it. Like, it's just it's that like desperate, no, it had to have been, it was all for this. It's like, no, he's not in it. Like, as much as he tells himself that he's doing this because he cares about the people and he doesn't want to see them killed, he has like such little like what's the word I want? Tertiary care for the families themselves. Like, it's there at the beginning, right? Like the big first reveal that Will gets of there's gonna be a fingerprint, and it's gonna be either on the eyes or the nails because he had to touch them. Um, like that's the first time, and it's one of the only times where Will's still like fairly distant from like becoming with Dollarhide, um, because he calls him you son of a bitch. Like he yells at him, he's mad at him. Um, but then just as it goes on, he's getting like less care for the family and the people themselves, particularly with the leads. Or I keep forgetting which one. The Jacobys were the first family to die, right?
The Jacobys are the first family to die. The Leeds are the second, but the Leeds are the one that he investigates for like a good 70% of the novel.
Yeah. But like with the Jacobys, estranged son, again, interesting connection to Will being a stepfather and stuff. Um, the Jacobys' estranged son, and he's got like a level of disdain for them and stuff, and like the line that comes to mind for me is when he's going through Jacoby's stuff, I don't know, lead stuff, and he's like, all these adult toys that he never used, and like in reference to the power drills and stuff, and he has to stop himself and go, he got up with his neck slit and tried to fight and protect his family. He deserves more from you than that. Like he's already becoming like disdainful of the people that he's like quote unquote doing this for. Like I love, it's very, very, you say that Harris isn't subtle. I like those subtle moments where it's not telling you that like he's becoming one with the dragon, but it's just little peppered things, little peppered throughout. The one that's probably the most on the nose, though, because Hannibal Lecter feels the need to spell it out for us, along with Freddie Lowndes accusing him, is the idea that he's so into the killer's mind that he unintentionally, but like subconsciously, sends Dollarhide to kill Lowndes by treating him like
Yeah.
That's I think my fucking favorite moment of this, like, cause it's in both adaptations, and Hannibal makes it like really complicated because Freddie Lowndes becomes like a recurring character in that series, but it's in both cases of the film adaptation, and like they say it, but I don't know, man, it just hits different in the book, particularly when like Hannibal sends him the whole letter. It's like it was a wonderful touch. So mean.
It's interesting how the book is able to kind of dance back and forth between Will not feeling any guilt because he didn't like Freddie Lowndes to starting to see the humanity in that person as he gets closer to catching the killer. There's a line like really, really early on in the book where he talks about his mental process, and he says he viewed his own mentality as grotesque but useful, like a chair made of antlers, which is just a 10 out of 10 description. Love that. That's such an uncomfortable picture. Like, what the fuck do you mean a chair made of antlers? That's disturbing. But it's that idea of like... but it's oh man, it's that's one of those like cursed objects you'd find in the Conjuring house, But he says that early on, and it is a real good hint right away of like when Will does what he does, the kind of person you're dealing with is not a nice guy anymore. It's not a person that sees people as human beings necessarily, and so much of his relationship to Freddy kind of mirrors this idea of like, on one level, he is taking on the persona of the killers to get at them, but the fact that he can do that at all does make you wonder, is that level of hate or animosity just in him already? And Freddy is kind of the conduit for that, of like, if Will was truly as divorced from the people he's catching as he would like to believe, then he would have probably felt more guilty about Freddie Lowndes, or he wouldn't have done the thing with the putting his hand on his shoulder to make the Tooth Fairy target him. Like there is a level of like just basic connection to Freddie that he so adamantly refuses because he doesn't like Freddy, that makes him a lot closer to the serial killers he's catching without him having to do his mental trick at all. Like, that's pure Will Graham. That's pure resentful because of the pictures Freddy took of him when he was recovering in the hospital. He just doesn't like that guy. And the fact that he's got that capability in him is why he's much closer to Hannibal and Dollarhide than he would be anyone else.
It is really fascinating because, like, Will thinks he's putting himself on the line, and, like, on some level he's convinced himself of that. But, like, the second that they know Freddy Lowndes has been taken by the Tooth Fairy, and again, one of the moments I just love is Will getting to the hospital and just admitting to himself that the whole plane ride over, he was hoping that Freddy would die before he got there so he wouldn't have to face him. And it's interesting because I think... I can't remember if they actually have Freddy talk to Will one last time in any of the adaptations. I think they don't, but it seems like they almost wanted to, or they get really close to it. They, gosh, it's just been a minute, and I'm having trouble remembering the specifics on that. But I would say it's probably not in Manhunter because that just doesn't have time for it. But I'm trying to remember if there's a scene with Norton and Hoffman after Freddy gets burned alive. Instead of it being on the tape recorder, if they decide to just have him say it to his face. I can't remember. Set me up, son of a bitch. Like I'm a fucking pet. Oh, so good.
There's a bit when you get to Lowndes' perspective before Dollarhide kidnaps him, because those are a good nice stretch of chapters where you just get to like see a day in the life of Freddy Lowndes before he gets kidnapped by a serial killer. But there's a line I like in there where Harris says, "In Lowndes was the longing need to be noticed that is often miscalled ego," and it's a really interesting dimension to that, because like if Will sort of suck $6 on him on purpose or subconsciously in some way, there is also this, if you're gonna be resentful of Graham for that, you do also kind of have to be sympathetic to Lowndes and where he's coming from. And I like this notion that Lowndes is not doing anything that is outside of his nature, and he's not denying his nature. He knows the kind of person he is, he knows the kind of work he does, and deep down he's got this need for people to appreciate him, just like Dollarhide does, and just like Will does. But the difference is, unlike those two, he's never in denial about who he is. He's just the person you see as the person you get. And that kind of ultimately is what does him in. But you can appreciate that when you're dealing with two characters whose entire journeys are this innate desire to become someone else. And the fact that the largest casualty in that equation is the one guy who didn't have that shortcoming, that just makes it all the sadder, even if he was a jackass.
I mean, yeah, like Lowndes is just kind of scum.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
In a way that's just fantastic to read. Like the idea that they didn't pay him enough, especially for someone that had to buy a woman. Like he's just gross. And like it's sad the idea that like he's in this like quasi relationship with this stripper and stuff. It's just such a weird dynamic. But he's so like just pleased with himself and the idea that he's blackmailed the FBI into giving him the greatest career move he's ever gonna have and stuff. He is just the fucking worst. He's like abusing his know-how and everything to get in. I do really like all that with Freddy in the book. I don't think anyone really gets across just how much of like a scumbag, but like just an honest scumbag Freddy is in any of the adaptations, which makes you feel like all the worse for him, because I still am not 100% sure Dollarhide was really going to kill him until the very, very end there. It's because
It seems like he's making up his mind as that conversation goes on.
Well, like, he obviously like records the stuff, so he's got everything he needs to kill him. But like in particular, the line that sticks out to me is the "You've done very well. There is one more thing I can show you if you really want to understand." Before he bites his lips off, which again, just way to prove you're not gay. Kiss another dude and bite his lips off. Someone just needed to play gay chicken with Dollarhide, and it would have fixed so many problems. But I thought that was so fascinating. Like that one line stuck out to me the most, and made me really go like, maybe there was a world in which he lived through this, which would have been, even crazier. But I don't know. I thought about that one a lot, and I wasn't sure what your thoughts were on that scene.
Yeah, he's thinking in his head in that scene of like, I haven't seen his face yet. It means he isn't going to kill me. And he's certainly like pleading in that moment, but there is that logic of like, if he wanted to kill him from the jump, then there would have been no need for pretense. But because Dollarhide's so unstable, and he's always like negotiating with himself and the dragon and what the dragon wants, and the way he negotiates at the end for Reba's life because he doesn't want to 100% commit to it. I think Leeds also has that very sort of, or Lowndes has that similar setup with Dollarhide, where it seems like he didn't want to kill him from the start. But as that conversation wore on, he was moving closer and closer in that direction. And on the one hand, you got to think like, you spend enough time with Freddie Lowndes and you're going to want to kill him. Maybe that was the point. But on the other hand, there is that sort of unpredictability that like Dollarhide doesn't really know what he's doing. And it's a really good contrast to the style of the book overall, because this is kind of that competency porn that I love, of just people doing stuff and they do it real well, and they get into all the minutia about fingerprints and pens that were used on toilet paper and the way ink dries and all that stuff. All of this like largely meaningless drivel that's just fascinating to read. And you have this well-oiled machine of the FBI tracking a serial killer, but the serial killer seems like, by and large, even though he's so systematic, he's such a mess internally that it's hard to predict what exactly he's going to do when you have him there.
Yeah, the forensics in this was interesting just because it mainly makes me think like, this is supposed to be like kind of cutting edge and really like giving you an insight in the time that it came out of like how far the FBI has come. Yeah. And it just kind of makes me wonder like, how cutting edge was it truly at the time, and how much have we moved on beyond it to where like this seems quaint, is something that I find kind of fascinating to think on. How much has the science truly evolved from what they're doing here, where they're doing like all this spectrographic analysis, and some of the stuff they're doing is like completely outdated because people don't like write letters anymore, right? They send emails.
Right. Classified sections don't really do what they used to.
Yeah, like there wouldn't be a classified section. It would be just a fucking forum, a post on some random fucking Twitter page or Facebook page or something, right? Like they'd have to hunt down what the secret code and like what the emoji code is and shit. Hannibal Lecter would be the greatest shit poster on Twitter.
Well, and there's another sort of element of this, that novelty of the early 80s, where I feel like we just kind of can't experience that anymore, because serial killers have been around since the dawn of time, but the American fascination and widespread reporting and catching of serial killers doesn't happen until like the 70s. And so the FBI gets formed early in the 1900s. It starts hiring people out of college instead of experienced law enforcement in the early 30s and 40s. They start using actual forensic science at that point because J. Edgar Hoover is really obsessed with this idea that the new science is the way that you catch criminals as opposed to the old-fashioned sense of justice. And you see a lot of like old veteran police officers kicked out of the FBI, and people half their age get promoted to special agent. And America starts seeing the boom of serial killer media and serial killer correspondence and stuff in the 70s. So when this book comes out in 81, you gotta imagine that Harris is kind of like on the cutting edge of all of this. That there isn't a whole lot of pop culture that gets this in the weeds about what you're watching. I mean, this is also part of why like Halloween was such a big hit. It's like in 1978, this idea that someone's just walking around with a knife killing people in a nice white suburban neighborhood, that was sort of the primal fear being driven into people that didn't exist before then. And so you get to this novel in 81 and you're reading about how the FBI tracks serial killers down, and it makes the whole world feel smaller and safer if you existed in that state of heightened paranoia.
Yeah, the getting into like the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s is such like a funny, quaint idea. And then like this eventually becoming the cop dramas, the like CSIs and NCIS and all the alphabet shows, is kind of fascinating too. And then that's evolved and affected the culture in other ways. So like, Barry was always a, police crime investigator, like crime scene investigator, but like that actually becoming like more prevalent and like a bigger deal just really expanded what exactly his role was, as opposed to just a random excuse of, oh, he's a scientist but also a cop. For like Barry Allen in the comics and shit. I don't know. It's interesting to think on. I still think back to the Flash show, and I'm still really disappointed that they didn't like take the joke that was right there in front of them of the reason Barry Allen's able to do the CSI stuff so fast is because he's the Flash, and otherwise it would take like hours to run all these experiments. It would just be so much fun. He's like, that's the biggest fiction of like your CSI and stuff is, all right, and we've got the lab results back. Oh, that was really quick, only 5 minutes. But the killer already got there. If only we'd been a little bit faster. Whereas in real life, 3 months later, hey, we got those lab results back. Like 9 more people have died in the meantime and shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that sort of ticking time clock here of like he's working off the lunar phases is their excuse to get some of those results back faster, probably. That's maybe the one part of the novel that I feel like just kind of goes nowhere. Of he's tying his killings to the moon cycle, which thematically means nothing, but plot-wise kind of gives you some time for the events of the novel to happen.
Yeah, the full moon really doesn't mean anything in this. That's a good point. It's got nothing to do with, like, it's just the idea that the blood looks different in the moonlight and he wants the most of it, I guess. I don't know. They never really get fully into that. And it's interesting because you kind of wonder if, like, with the ritualization of it, there might be a version of Dollarhide that like couldn't kill unless it's a full moon. If like you went into that further,
Yeah.
like the idea of like he would have to have interrupted his cycle and wait for the full moon to like kill Freddy and shit might have been interesting. But instead he's becoming. I am becoming. I am the dragon. Dollarhide gets the most out of the novel than any of the other characters, though, I think. You get much more Dollarhide in the novel than you do the other. Either
well, you get to
Will
hear his entire childhood and shit, which is in none of the adaptations, as far as I remember.
Yeah, the closest you get is Red Dragon, just kind of giving you the like the book that he was making ever since his childhood, and like you hear his grandmother at one point. So it's That's probably the hardest of the book to get through is as you go through just this fucking tortured childhood and him being disfigured and that causing him just so much trouble. Like my heart fucking broke. The can you say grandma or can you tell me your name? A big boy like you could certainly say his name. Cunt face, because the other boys had helped him. She's like, Jesus Christ, that's so sad.
That's
And then like
so messed up.
that's like still how he thinks of himself, because that's like what the dragon names him later.
Yeah, that's what he calls them.
Oh god. And like the fact that like his speech reverts back to that childhood state when he's just at his lowest. Oh man, it's just devastating.
Yeah, the background stuff with him is really interesting, and it's helped by the fact that like I feel like we understand Dollarhide's background and motivations in many ways more than we understand Will Graham's, because Will's got that hanging guilt about the person that he killed before the events of the book, and some of that comes full circle at the end, but you don't really know Will's background at all. He's kind of a blank slate, and you're filling it in over the course of the story where you learn about his wife and kids and his relationship to Hannibal Lecter and stuff. You're meeting him in real time, and then you contrast that with a killer who you're supposed to like less, but you understand him down to like a molecular level. And that, again, that's sort of like that weird way that Harris is able to play with your sympathies of, here's what your expected feeling is supposed to be for this character, but what if in your attempt to catch him, you just start to resonate with him more and more and more? How much can I tell you about this person before he feels more alive in your mind than the good guy does?
That is like one of the things that I like the most about Dollarhide in the book is you just get such a deep sense of what is driving him, and I like the discussion of the Blake painting more in this one, that like it is this just raw primal sexual energy that like erotic energy that he just immediately identifies with and like feels the need to change into and personify is just so fascinating. I also really love just how, as he starts to develop, self-confidence from killing all these people, he's given just a chance to have like a normal fucking life, and the idea of that just completely fucking breaks him, and he just starts spiraling out of control so quickly. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, you get to see Molly and Will's relationship deteriorate just as him and Reba's relationship starts to form. And that's just another one of those moments where you feel like there is something about Dollarhide that's relatable, that's understandable, that's very deeply human. And every opportunity where he's kind of reminded of that humanity, of the idea that he is who he is, that he doesn't have to become something else, that's the thing that he just cannot fundamentally accept. And I feel especially bad for Reba at the end of this, like, she didn't hurt anybody. She was a little horny. She got a boyfriend. She's got a good job. She didn't ask for all this.
Man, she had to have quit after that, and then like
honestly,
because there's no way you could go back to that job with the way people are gonna treat you after like you were the one dating the serial killer. So and like that's so tragic for her, because she's like talked about wanting to go into the real world and not just be so insular into the disabled community.
Right.
She's got nowhere else to go now, right? Like that's just so fucking tragic for her.
Yeah, no, I feel real bad for her, and I feel like the book does a good job of making her relationship to Dollarhide feel genuine and not the Man movie. That movie tries to make it feel a little bit more calculated on Dollarhide's part. As far as like he's more sure of himself in that version, and while Reba kind of shows up to his life accidentally, who he is as a person does not fundamentally shift by her presence. But I do like that part of the book better, where you get to see that he has an actual genuine identity crisis because she's there.
Yeah, no, and I think that's again one of the things I like about the Red Dragon adaptation more is particularly with the way Manhunter ends with just random shooting spree through the house with like the music playing. It just starts to become like much more generic compared to the like suspenseful building of changes and expectations and just everything crazy that goes on in the book and getting adapted in the film. I tend to like that ending a lot better too. And again, with it all spiraling out of control and going to like ending up in Will's house is just the perfect way for that whole dynamic to end. I'll be a million miles away, Molly. Don't worry about it. Oh, what'd you think of Hannibal in this? Given that, like, he's not in much of any of the adaptation of either film. Again, like Red Dragon, I think mostly just gets made so that they can have Anthony Hopkins in it. Um, but what did you think of Hannibal's presence here?
I liked him. He's a really understated, even more so than he is in Manhunter, because he's only got like the two main scenes where he goes and where Wilt goes and talks to him, and then later where he makes the phone call to get Will's address and get the ball rolling for the Tooth Fairy, and then he's got the letter at the very end. I don't think there's really anything else where he shows up, but I liked him. I think the book does also a really good job of like the fact that Hannibal is so clearly well educated and so easily likable, and that he communicates so easily, puts another nice contrast between us and Will, where Will has a hard time saying what he's thinking and feeling, and then you meet a serial killer, the person you're supposed to dislike the most, and they just feel more alive and more human than him, and that makes you kind of lower your guard. I like the line at the very end of the book a lot when he sends Will the letter that Jack just ends up burning, where he says, "Half measures are the curse of it. Any rational society would either kill me or give me my books."
Yep, no, I love that.
That's so good. That's so good. I like that quite a bit. I like that he gets that last little gotcha and you get to feel the sense of like the only other person in this world that really understands Will is Hannibal Lecter, and Hannibal Lecter's got to have the last little punch at the end of the book because he knew where this was going from the get-go.
Yep. No, I do love that about it. It's just so incredibly uncomfortable. How much Hannibal is just in this dude's head and able to start deconstructing him so quickly. Like again, Will trying to run out of the cell block before Hannibal can say, "Because we're the same, Will," and then just as the thing continues to develop and he keeps, pointing out the similarities of that's why you're able to identify so quickly is because you're just one of us, and you've used the law to just kill Freddie Lounds for you. You've just found a way around it. It's just so perfect. It was a great touch. I hated Freddie Lounds too, just like you did. I never would have thought of that, Will. You're so clever.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I also like the part that Hannibal plays in the larger public's fascination with serial killers and crime fiction, and you get early on the introduction that Hannibal is a famous serial killer, and that Graham builds his reputation on the fact that he's the one who caught Hannibal Lecter, and that everyone is just so fascinated by that relationship, and that's why Freddie Lounds is able to get famous. That's why Will's able to get famous. Everything changes because of Hannibal Lecter and his immediate presence in the world. And there's a bit in the book where somebody's like selling T-shirts, and there's a line. Whoops, I'm trying to find it now. There's a line I really like where They say at the same time, attendance rose at horror movies that should have died at the drive-ins in a week. Fascination and horror. The entrepreneur who hit the punk rock market with Tooth Fairy t-shirts came out with an alternate line that said the Red Dragon is a one-night stand. Sales were divided about equally between the two. And I like that Harris is kind of immediately aware of this idea that the public's fascination with these sorts of morbid things can so easily be commodified, and that you could ignore the emotional impact that they're having on people just as easily as Will is able to dive into those emotions. That you're living in this weird sort of societal collapse where the fascination with the serial killer is about the least empathetic thing you can do, but the only way to catch the serial killer is to embody their perspective in some way, whether it's through forensics or it's through psychology. And that breeds a kind of twisted society where somebody like Hannibal can become famous.
Yep. Nah, that's fantastic shit. I adore it.
It's a good book. It's a really good book.
Yeah. Like, this was one thing that I thought was kind of interesting, because, like, I remember I asked this when we did the compare and contrast between the film adaptations. Do you think the book does a better job engaging with the like artistic intent behind the Blake painting compared to the way that the films deal with it?
I think the book and at least Manhunter, because I haven't rewatched Red Dragon since we did the review. I think Manhunter and the novel Red Dragon are kind of on par, because the biblical side of the Blake painting is not really present in either of them. Because the whole thing behind the Red Dragon is that it's a painting about the Book of Revelations. And that doesn't really seem like it comes up in either. The thing that I found was a little bit more fascinating was just this idea that the Red Dragon as a painting represents, like you said, to Dollarhide, that sort of primal sexual urge, but also that sort of voyeuristic pleasure that he sees this big thing with red wings, this woman clothed, and that idea of this voyeuristically looking and appreciating that sexuality is the thing that drives him. And you see that mirrored early on when he's watching his own home videos, and he talks about his sexual performance like he's a director on set. And he talks about the way he's moving and making sure he can get a better shot next time, and the way that his lust is being distanced because he's talking about it on a technical level. And it has that interesting component that all art has, because at the end of the day, what art is supposed to do is it's supposed to inject feelings into you. It's supposed to be a way to manipulate your perspective so that you feel what the art is supposed to make you feel. And because Dollarhide felt something primal by looking at that Blake painting, he's going out of his way to recreate that feeling over and over again, and trying to control the circumstances under which he's able to feel it. And by so doing, he thinks he's arriving towards this great becoming. And I like that. I like how he finds himself in this trap where, like, if you are constantly trying to present this voyeuristic picture, you're never actually in it. You're always at a distance. So he's kind of on this self-defeating path. He's always going to be becoming. He can never have arrived. And that's kind of the thing that he just is fundamentally unable to accept. And I all of that wrapped around this idea that the book is formally trying to make the reader do the very thing that the book itself is about, which is finding that root empathy in another person, and how that manipulation of feelings can kind of be dehumanizing. I think the book does a really good job with that stuff, and I think it does a really good job with that sort of underside to what art is supposed to be. But it feels like it could have been any painting with that meaning. Like, I think that if you found any painting that had a sort of lustful connotation, it could have worked. It helps the fact that the Red Dragon painting is kind of menacing and has a title as cool as the Red Dragon. But I don't think there's anything in the book or Manhunter that specifically makes me think this is in conversation with William Blake specifically.
Well, like, the reason I ask is because, particularly with, like, Hannibal Lecter being the character he is, as, you know, portrayed as, like, the very predatory in like the biological sense of the word character or archetype of a serial killer. Will talks about this a little bit of the way that like animals that eat us are much harder to empathize with. Like sharks are scarier and harder to empathize with than any other animal, because anything that eats flesh is just more evil to us. So that's what like makes Hannibal kind of sit in this like evolutionary monster kind of category, and Tooth Fairy as well. But like he's got, you know, that aspect of Hannibal, which is shown in like his heightened sense of smell. It's I think they only mention it once in here, but like he's got the you know, heart rate that doesn't go up even when he's committing his acts of brutality. It becomes a bigger thing in the next two books that Hannibal has a perfect sixth finger on one hand, which is such a stupid detail, but whatever. Like there's just a lot that goes into the idea of Hannibal Lecter is like a like predator of Homo sapien. And like Red Dragon kind of leans into that too. But one of the things that I found interesting about Harris is these are very good novels in the like for what you would get from like a New York Times bestseller. But I can't help but feel like they're just shy of what most people would be willing to consider as literature. They fall more into like genre fiction than into a literary fold. And I think it's interesting with Harris, who tries to inject and work around a lot of this like higher society cultural element to his writing around not only Hannibal Lecter but around the Red Dragon. The idea that the killer is infatuated and inspired by the painting, and the fact that like he has to go consume the painting and like commit this crime against the preservation of art. And that might be like the worst thing he does in the book to some people. So I don't know. I find that interesting that like Harris feels the need to insert all this stuff, and I wonder if that is intentional to the characters in the writing, or if maybe he considers himself to have better tastes than the genre fiction that he's, you know, become known for. And he's maybe trying to signal that a little bit to the audience.
I think there's a lot of writers that succumb to that tendency, where they feel like they've been pigeonholed inside of a certain kind of genre fiction label, and so they try to like gesture towards things that are considered literary or fine art as their mode of trying to escape that. And most of the time, I think you notice when it doesn't work. Like, I think this is the biggest problem with a lot of Grant Morrison's early work, is they have this tendency to want to get above their skis talking about postmodernism and psychology and Latin American fiction. I'm like, dude, you don't know anything about any of this. You're just saying words, but okay. But there is a certain level of like, if I can understand what they think it means, then it works within the confines of the story, and I'm okay with it. I think the trouble you run into with stuff like that is exactly what Red Dragon runs into, which is if you're going to reference some other work, whether it's another movie, another book, another painting, whatever, then the act of being in conversation with it has to extend beyond just the presence of the work in your fictional world, right? Like the Red Dragon painting can't just be a painting in the story. There should be some attempt to kind of be in dialogue with what the painting is about, or what the significance of the painting is, and yada yada yada. And the painting serves a particular thematic purpose for Dollarhide and the story. It's not that it's meaningless, but the fact that you don't have to be a Blake scholar and I'm no Blake scholar. I know very little about William Blake. But the fact that you don't have to know anything about William Blake to get at what the novel is trying to go for sort of signals to me that the Blake connection there could have been anything. That you could have picked any painting with a cool enough name and cover that could reasonably be described as inciting a weird sexual arousal and power in a character, and you would have arrived at the same conclusion that this story does, because the painting is about Book of Revelations. It's a painting that matches a very specific description in the text. William Blake's got a whole library of poetry and other paintings that we could talk about in relation to stuff like JMD, the Marvel writer. He's got a lot of comics that are very specifically engaged with William Blake and William Blake poetry. Like, you can do that. That's a specific avenue you can go, but I don't think Harris does. I don't mean that in a way like it's bad. Like, I don't think it's a criticism to be like, you don't have to read William Blake to understand the Hannibal Lecter novels. But I do think that it's worth sort of pointing out of like the painting, the fact that the painting exists in the real world doesn't seem to like hold any sway over what the book means. And if that's going to be the case, I just kind of wonder about why you feel the need to throw your college degree around like that of like, oh, I know William Blake, I know the Red Dragon painting, if it's not gonna mean anything.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it is interesting to me. Like, if it were just the William Blake painting, if it were just the Red Dragon, I would tend to think, yeah, it's just kind of a one-off. It's the fact that it like wraps into Hannibal being just such a sophisticate.
Yeah.
And
or
like
wanting
that,
to be seen as a sophisticate.
I think that he is. Like what is it in Hannibal? He gets in. He does a presentation on Italian Renaissance art in order to secure his position as a scholar or museum director or something like that, because he's posing as a South American, and the Italian intellectual community doesn't want him to have this very prestigious job because he's not an Italian. So he has to like prove his knowledge to such a satisfactory degree to get the job. It's so like in particular like obsessed with the idea of Hannibal being like this absolute genius and sophisticate, and like that is just a fundamental part of his character. Like he can not only does he cook people, right? Like the thing that also helps give him away, at least in some of the adaptations, is the fact of what he's taking from his victims to cook. Is he's taking stuff for like fine dining meals and stuff. You know, sweet buns is the one that gives him away in the film adaptation of Red Dragon, or the initial film, the 2002 film of Red Dragon. So I don't know. It's like, I think the sophisticate nature of Hannibal Lecter as a character, there is just part of me that and like even like Mason Verger, when you get to Hannibal, has a bit of that energy too, but he's also like, you know, Hannibal's a vaguely European from Latvia or whatever it is, whereas like Mason Verger's like trash new money because he's got like pig farm money, and so he's trying to like act sophisticated and stuff too, but like he's like intentionally portrayed as like lesser than Hannibal from like a high society perspective. It's like he's a brute who's pretending to have class. It's, I don't know, it's just all like very, very intentional, and so I kind of wonder if there's maybe more to be said about Harris within the context of these choices than there is about the actual value that these references to, you know, classical art and literature and music have within the context of the stories themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. it's something that entered my head. I wonder if like Thomas Harris is just like really into the culture scene, but also like kind of low-key obsessed with like FBI serial killer stuff. So he's like, guys, I promise I'm smart.
Yeah, and I mean, there is a little bit of that question mark of like, all right, you sneak some of this stuff in your Hannibal Lecter novels because they sell really well, cool. But what are you gonna do when you don't have Hannibal Lecter and you just have to write your own new novel again? And then you look on his wiki and he's like, oh, he's written 2 novels that are not Hannibal Lecter, and they were like several decades apart.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. So, like, he must be doing well off of, I guess, the royalties of this or whatever he was doing before this. I don't really know, like, a lot about Thomas Harris's career. Obviously, he must have made fucking buku amounts of money from Silence of the Lambs adaptation, if nothing else, since that was just such a low-key thing that I don't think anyone expected to get nearly as popular as it did.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably living somewhere between the money he received for the film rights to the books individually, and then the actual paychecks for all the books, specifically Silence of the Lambs, which is probably the best selling of the 4.
I would be surprised if it's like ever been out of print.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I went to Barnes Noble and I bought Red Dragon, I didn't see all 4 novels. I saw multiple print editions of all 4 novels. There wasn't just the paperback I bought. There was a mass market paperback. There was a hardcover. There was a collector's edition hardcover. There was like 5 different versions of each book, all on the same shelf.
And I'm so shocked to hear that there's multiple printings of Hannibal Rising.
I don't think I saw Hannibal Rising now that you mention it, but I did
you
see
said all 4
Hannibal,
books, I was
Silence,
like,
and Red
whoa.
Dragon.
Okay, you said all 4 books, and I'm like, man, I can't believe that anyone bothered with this shit. Oh. Terrible, terrible. Alright, well, I think that does it for this one. I think we've talked Red Dragon to death, at least until they get another adaptation out there for us.
Yeah, or until I read Silence of the Lambs and we come back and do this again.
Maybe. It'll be interesting. Let me know. I'm less interested to talk about Silence of the Lambs than I am about Hannibal. To be perfectly honest.
Well, I probably won't get to either for a little while, but I will say I enjoyed this enough that I want to read the next 2 at minimum.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would say do that and then stop. I don't think the Hannibal Rising is worth anyone's time. Unfortunately,
The movie certainly isn't.
The book's not much better from what I remember. It's very short.
Oh, that's good at least.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the Luddite. Oh,
shit! I fucked up. We didn't do a rating. I'll give Red Dragon the novel 4 out of 5 family videos that no longer work for modern adaptations. So you'd have to find a new way for Will Graham to piece it all together.
He's just watching iPhone videos now. He's watching TikToks. He's trying to get into the killer's head by watching TikToks all day.
And then, like, you cut back and forth, and they're like, they have the same algorithm, so they're watching the same videos.
He's like, in order to get to the killer's mind, I gotta make sure that all of my search engines feed me the same algorithm. Quickly, what were they Googling? I'm right there with you. I'll give it 4 out of 5 chairs made of antlers.
There you go. All right. Yeah. So until next time, I'm the Philosopher,
And I'm the Luddite.
and we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.